Hello, in today's video we're going to quickly breeze over Firewalk Studios getting shut down after Concord's disastrous release. I'm like 2.5, 3 days late to this, so then we're going to swiftly move on to what I think this means for AAA gaming in general. So as said, let's quickly breeze over Concord. Many of you probably know about this. For those who don't though, Sony is shutting down Firewalk Studios after the disastrous release of Concord, which was the PlayStation 5 hero shooter that lasted about 2 weeks before getting shut down. According to Sony, it was supposed to be their Star Wars for the PlayStation 5. Obviously, that didn't happen. What it was basically Guardians of the Galaxy from Temu. I don't think this comes as a surprise. There were rumours, and they also said that they were looking at exploring all possible options for Concord, but ultimately decided to just sunset the studio, which I think is what everyone expected. It was either that or the game would go free to play and try to recoup some of the money through microtransactions, but ultimately it wouldn't have made near enough money. Like, it might have made a few more million from those, and that's it. And the rumours were this game cost hundreds of millions to make. Therefore, there was no world in which Concord was ever going to make return on investment, even break even. It just wasn't going to happen, so I think we all knew this was coming. Now, what I can tell you as someone who's been involved in making a game in the shooter genre, the PvP shooter genre, is that that whole space is just continuously changing, and also it is getting more and more and more saturated. It's no longer enough to just do what another game does, but in a different art style, or having different character designs, different maps, different modes, and also just doing the same style of shooter, such as a hero shooter or a class-based shooter, now puts you in a situation where the gaming masses often say that you're just chasing a fad and that there's nothing new. You're just trying to, slot yourself into the market and get a piece of the pie. You really do have to innovate and do something different. And if you are spending, 6, 7, 8 years working on your game, you can't figure out what it needs to be. You end up chasing trends, all these kind of things. You go for a free-to-play model and have too many microtransactions. All these things can ultimately just upset players and, end up in the game's demise. If your game isn't going to innovate, it needs to be way more content heavy than any other game on the market. And it also needs to be free. And if your game isn't content heavy and it isn't free, it has to really innovate and stand out in order to get people to part with their wallets. This is why indie games are on the rise, and why slowly but surely many people are making their way to indies rather than AAA studios. There was too much money, too much investment capital, too many big companies coming into the AAA space. You've got studios that have 300, 400, 500, some even close to 1,000 people working there on a game that takes 6 years but has no clear direction, no clear vision other than we want a piece of the pie, we want to slot ourselves into the 0.1% and make absolute millions. But then you've got absolute gems in the indie space that are just fine with getting by and, making a full-time living from doing game dev. And the team of people that are working on those is like 5 to 10 people. And, 2 minutes of research, even less, can prove to you that some of the top grossing games on Steam, some of the highest earners on Steam this year were by indie publishers. Out of the top 10 highest grossing games on Steam, 50% of them this year were indie games. So that alone shows. Also, last year, 31% of Steam revenue came from indie games, which is up from 25% in previous years. So slowly but surely, indies are making up close to half of the gaming space. As I also said, they don't take as long to make. AAA games are now taking like 3 to 6 years to make. So between the years of 2018 and 2023, indie game releases accounted for 99% of new games across all gaming platforms. That's absolute insanity. 99% of new game releases in the past 6 years? have been indie games. There's hardly any AAA games releasing in comparison. I mean, a bit of a tangent here, but it's still relevant. I think the last time I purchased a AAA game was probably the campaign for Halo Infinite, which released 3 years ago. But during that time, between then and now, I think I must have purchased maybe 15 indie games. I mean, in the past couple months alone, I purchased Clone Drone in the Danger Zone, Celico, Hollow Knight, Battlebeat Remastered, Nexomon, Cat Quest, Grapples Galore. I think that might have been free actually. But, you know, you get the idea. There's so many indie games that I can list off that I've purchased in the past few months. I've even gone as far as purchasing Patreon access to alpha versions of indie games. I currently pay $8.50 a month just to get alpha build access to an indie game. That's how invested I am in certain indie projects. A AAA game could never. AAA studio has never and could never get me to pay that much money on a recurring basis just to get access to early versions of their game. Obviously, some of you know as well, this channel originated as a Halo channel, and I've been a Halo fan since I was about 8 or 9 years old, so 20 years now. I've seen lots of comparison online, even full-on YouTube videos about this, between the comparison of 343 Industries and Bungie. Well, now Halo Studios and Bungie. We don't really know yet what Halo Studios will bring to the table, so for this example, we'll just go with 343 and Bungie. When Bungie was founded, it was, you know, a group of guys basically in a shed making video games for fun, and it was a small team where everybody knew everyone. You're all just chipping in, wearing many hats and working on multiple things, and there was no financial backing behind it other than their own wallets, or maybe like an angel investor round, right? Now, it's a studio that's got like 300 to 400 people working there. The drive isn't to make a fun game that people might play. It's to make something which makes as much money as possible. It's to please investors. It's to please Microsoft. There's a huge difference between how those two companies came about. Bungie originated as a studio that was filled with passion and ideas and a love for making games and wanted to make something, whereas 343 was a studio that was basically forced to continue making something for the sole purpose of bringing in money. The drive just completely different, and I think that's like the AAA space as a whole right now. Some of the best indie games, I think, come out of things such as game jams. If you don't know what game jams are, basically there'll be a set deadline, so maybe one day, maybe a week, or maybe a month. Or somewhere in between, where an indie team or a solo developer has to put a game together, and there'll be certain rules such as a certain theme, or it must include certain mechanic, must be a certain genre, must have a certain camera position, etc. And then you all enter the competition, see what you make, and compare at the end, and there's a winner, and you get prizes, etc. Some of the best games come out of stuff like that, because everybody tries to innovate, everybody tries to do something different in order to stand out. When you're all slotted into like the same restrictions, right? You have to really stand out and innovate and create something which is new and unique in order to win those competitions. And I think that's where some of the best indie games come. I think that slowly but surely indie will, at the going rate, indie will take over the gaming space and will have kind of a reset where the most popular and the most profitable games are ones that are smaller but unique and people want to part with their money for. And I think that free to play is going to start slowly dying down. I think that we've kind of reached the peak of free to play games, and now slowly but surely on the rise will come small games that are quite cheap, so maybe let's say between the price of $5 to $15, but people are willing to part with their money because it's unique and they feel like it's worth, you know, they're getting like good value for money, and it's worth parting with that in order for the game. So yeah, I think that's the way that things are going, and you know the data shows that as well. As I said, 50% of the top games on Steam right now are indie. And that's huge. You know, some of those studios are making hundreds of thousands, if not millions, and those are studios of 5, 10, 15 people, which means that those guys are incredibly well off now, and that's great to see, rather than just a giant gaming studio that has, you know, 400 people, and 85-90% of them are on a wage, while the other 10 top percent reap all the benefits and the profits, etc. So it's going to be interesting to see where the gaming space goes over the next 5 to 10 years. I really think that indie is eventually going to account for more of the top selling games than AAA does at this rate. I think something within AAA is really going to have to change. Maybe that is something such as splitting off your huge studio of 400 people into 4 studios of 100 people, putting them all on separate projects and seeing what gets created. Something like that could really work and could be really cool. So yeah, that's my take on AAA and indie gaming and just the gaming space in general, and what I think that Concord showed to everyone. So yeah, thanks for watching this video. I'm hoping it was a bit of a unique take, a bit of a spin on the Concord news, just to try and stand out and do something a little bit different rather than just reporting on exactly what happened with Concord. I think everyone's done that already. So yeah, alright, thanks for watching this commentary video. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.